My name is Isadora Mendez, and this isn't just the story of the most humiliating day of my life. It's the story of what came after. On that summer Saturday, exactly 10 years ago, I was ready to marry the man I had loved since I was 19, Guilherme Duarte. Tall, elegant, with a smile that made my whole body forget the traumas I had carried since childhood. I believed in him. More than I believed in myself. The church was full. My parents were smiling in the front pew, the guests were anxious, the wedding march was starting, and I, with my eyes shining with emotion, was about to take my steps toward the altar. But he wasn't there. In Guilherme's place, there was an envelope. A note. 3 words. I'm not coming. I was in shock. I was shaking. No one understood what was happening. The entire church fell into such a deep silence that I could hear my heart breaking inside my chest. Then my godmother's phone rang. She answered, and in seconds she turned white as a sheet. "He's on a plane to Italy," she whispered, staring at me as if she were carrying a death sentence. He ran away. On our wedding day. But the worst was yet to come. 2 weeks later, social media exploded with photos. Guilherme smiling, holding hands with my best friend. Lorena. Yes, her. The same one who held my hand while I tried on my wedding dress. The same one who cried with me when I got the marriage proposal. The same one who hugged me at the wedding rehearsal, telling me how much I deserved to be happy. She stole him from me. And not only that, she laughed. She posted it, taunted me, made sure I looked like the rejected one in the story. As if I were the deluded one, the poor thing. At that moment, something died inside me. But also, something was born. 10 years have passed since then. Today, I am a different woman. I am no longer that Isadora who cried herself to sleep. I am no longer the abandoned bride. I am not the victim. I am the woman who discovered something that changes everything. Because a few weeks ago, an anonymous envelope was left at my door, and inside it was a photo, an image that froze my blood, a revelation that made me understand that everything I had lived through was a trap much bigger than I had imagined. I won't rest until I find out the truth. And when I do, she'll pay. I remember exactly how I felt at that moment. My feet glued to the church floor, the heat of the dress suffocating my skin, and the eyes, dozens, maybe hundreds, fixed on me. But not with admiration, not with tenderness, with pity, with horror, with that kind of silent judgment that bleeds the soul. I was left at the altar, and the whole world saw it. On the way home, I couldn't speak. My mother tried to understand. My father could barely drive, but all I could hear was the echo of a cruel question inside my head. Why? That night, locked in my room, still wearing my wedding dress stuck to my sweaty body and my eyes swollen from crying, I received the first notification on my cell phone. It was a direct message on Instagram. "He's better off this way, beautiful. You weren't right for him anyway. Lorena Castro Real." I clicked on the profile. It was her. Lorena, the same girl who slept at my house on weekends, the same girl who held the bouquet with me at rehearsals, the same girl who said that friendship comes first. She had posted a photo with Guilherme in Rome. She was smiling, wearing the necklace he gave me on our 3-year anniversary. The caption, "True love doesn't follow scripts. It breaks plans and runs away to Rome." There were over 3,000 likes. And below, the comments, "I ship them so much. Best couple. Good thing he realized in time." With every word, my stomach turned. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a spectacle. It was public humiliation. I tried to call Guilherme. He didn't answer. I tried to text Lorena. She blocked me. In the days that followed, I lost my job. Not because I was absent, but because my image went viral. I became a meme, a viral tragedy. The bride abandoned at the altar. My photos in the dress were leaked. Someone at the ceremony recorded the scene of my breakdown. An influencer reposted it with the caption, "She expected flowers." She got a note. People started approaching me on the street, at the supermarket, at the pharmacy. "You're the one from the church, right? The one he dumped." My name became synonymous with shame. And Lorena? She gained followers, sponsorships, invitations to podcasts. She talked about female empowerment and following your heart, even if it hurts others. Till one day, 6 months after the disaster, I received an event notification. Save the date, Guilherme and Lorena, destination wedding in Capri. It wasn't enough to steal my fiancé. She had to invite me to the celebration. Of course, I didn't go. But I saw the photos. They got married on a cliff by the sea, with a lace dress almost identical to the one I had chosen. And that's when I understood. She planned everything. From the beginning. Every smile, every piece of false advice, every gesture of support. Lorena was not a victim of passion. She was a predator disguised as a friend, and I was the perfect prey. But 10 years later, I discovered something she tried to hide from everyone. Something that could destroy everything she built. For months, I didn't recognize my own reflection. I, who had always been communicative, determined, full of plans, I turned into a specter. Someone who went through the days on autopilot, trying not to exist too much, so as not to bother others with my pain. Shame was a weight on my shoulders. How could I explain to people that I had been betrayed, deceived, exposed, all by those I trusted most? After the scandal, my boss called me in for a delicate conversation. Isadora, do you understand that your presence is destabilizing the environment? And with that, I was released to take care of my mental health. A disgusting euphemism for, you've become a joke, and that's bad for the company's image. I was fired. My parents tried to help, but it was difficult. My father, a man of few words, would only say, you need to be strong. My mother cried in secret, as if her pain were an extension of my shame. My siblings disappeared. They felt uncomfortable with the commotion, and some friends, the ones who remained, avoided me. It was as if I were contagious, as if my misfortune were a virus. The house I lived in, the apartment Guilherme and I chose together, was sold. He took my name off the lease, and since I couldn't afford the mortgage on my own, I was evicted within 3 months. I ended up in a tiny studio in the north of the city, with no windows, smelling of mold and with peeling walls. The furniture I had? I sold almost all of it to survive. All that was left was a mattress, a portable stove, and a small chest of drawers that belonged to my grandmother. The nights were worse. I dreamed about the wedding. I woke up crying, sometimes screaming. I lost almost 15 kilos in 4 months. I developed panic attacks. I was afraid to go out on the street. I was afraid to hear my name. Till one day, I sat on the bathroom floor, with cold water running down my back, and wondered if the world wouldn't be better off without me. If pain was my only legacy. If that was the end of the line. But something, perhaps a primal instinct, perhaps the last remnant of strength, made me call a therapist. A woman named Dr. Helena, who listened to my silence on the phone for 2 whole minutes before saying, if you're alive, you still have a story to tell. But you have to decide if you're going to be the victim or the author. I began a slow process of recovery. Weekly sessions, medication, guided breathing. Sometimes I cried just hearing the therapist's voice. Still, during that whole time, I couldn't stop thinking about Lorena. She was glowing. A magazine wedding, honeymoon in the Maldives, videos with Guilherme smiling, talking about love that overcomes judgment, a YouTube channel with relationship tips, and every time someone complimented her, every time they said she was brave for loving someone who was already taken, a part of me died again. But rock bottom has a sound. It's the absolute silence of shattered dignity. And when I finally hit that floor, with my soul torn apart and my dreams in ruins, I realized that from there, I could only do 2 things: give up, or dig something new. And it was in that dark place that fate began to sow the next act of my life. The act in which pain becomes a weapon. The act in which the hidden truth appears. And with it, the first spark of revenge. Because the envelope I found recently wasn't left there by chance. 10 years later, I was getting on with my life, at least on the surface. I was working as a freelance proofreader, with few clients, earning just enough to pay the bills. I still lived alone, still avoided social media, still looked behind me before turning every corner. I had rebuilt my silence, but not my peace. Then one morning, as I opened the door to get the newspaper, I saw the envelope. There was no sender, no markings, plain beige paper, sealed with dark tape. As I opened it, my fingers trembled. Inside was a single photograph printed on matte paper. It was old, worn, almost blurred at the edges, but the face in the center was unmistakable. Guilherme, much younger. Next to him, a man in a suit and a woman with a blank expression. On the back of the photo, a sentence scribbled by hand. The truth begins before you. Look for Osvaldo Torres. He saw everything. Osvaldo Torres? The name meant nothing to me. But the tone, the mystery, the urgency of the sentence stirred something in me. I spent the next few days looking for any clues. I searched online, used social media, looked through public records. Nothing. Till in a closed group of former students from the college where Guilherme studied, I found an old post. "Congratulations, Professor Osvaldo, on your retirement." I clicked on it. The post led to a photo of a gray-haired man with a shy smile and eyes that seemed to carry years of untold truths. I discovered that he had been a professor of contemporary history at the private university where Guilherme studied business administration, and where, coincidentally, Lorena also studied journalism. From there, I found an address linked to his name. A remote house in a small town 2 hours from the capital. I didn't think twice. I took a bus and went. The house was simple, with a porch surrounded by pots of wilted flowers. I knocked on the door. No one answered. I knocked again, till I heard shuffling footsteps. Yes? It was him, Osvaldo Torres. Thinner, more hunched over, but with the same eyes as in the photo. "I need to talk to you. It's about Guilherme Duarte and Lorena Castro." Her name made his face harden. He hesitated for a moment, then gestured for me to come in. Inside the house, the air smelled of old books and wood. We sat in silence until he spoke. "You're the girl from the altar, aren't you, Isadora?" My eyes widened. "You know me?" "I know the story, because I was part of it." Without knowing it was a horror story. Then he told me. He said he met Guilherme when he was still a teenager, an ambitious but unstable young man. According to him, Guilherme always had a tendency to manipulate people. He was loved by many, but cold to those who were of no use to him. Lorena, according to him, had always been obsessed with climbing the social ladder and used her charm to get close to anyone who could take her up. But the most shocking thing was what he revealed next. They didn't start a romance during their engagement, Isadora. They had been together for years, since college. They pretended to break up when he met you, but they never broke up. Everything that happened was staged. They just needed a clean victim, someone with a good reputation, someone who could be exposed and make an impact. I could barely breathe. "Why?" I asked, in a whisper. "Because Guilherme came from a bankrupt family, and Lorena's father would only allow her to invest in his company if she married a man with an untouchable reputation. You were the guarantee. The staging of a perfect love. They wanted to use the engagement to attract sponsors, generate media coverage, and consolidate an image of a successful couple. Then they would come up with the romantic plot twist: forbidden love, elopement, scandal. It was a publicity stunt, and you were the script for their pain. The world spun around me. I wasn't just betrayed. I was used as a publicity stunt for an image makeover, an emotional decoy. And why are you telling me this now?" He sighed. "Because only now have I found the courage. And because you need to know, there are documents, proof, all kept in a safe. And if you want justice, you can start there." I left that house with my legs shaking, but with something new inside me. Rage, clean rage, conscious rage. They didn't destroy me. They shaped me. And now I have a story to rewrite. I returned home as if I were returning from the battlefield. My mind was racing, my body exhausted, and a USB stick trembling inside my bag. Professor Osvaldo had given me not only the truth, but also files, recordings, printouts, and an old contract signed by Lorena's father. Financial agreements, image rights clauses, references to the strategic relationship between her and Guilherme. I had proof, but I had no peace. I spent days without sleeping properly. I searched through the contents late into the night, going over each audio file with teary eyes. In one of the recordings, I heard Lorena saying, "She's perfect for this. She looks nice, has a tragic past, and is easy to manipulate. It will make for a lot more drama." She was talking about me, about my story, about my pain as a script. I felt disgusted, at myself, for being so blind, for trusting so much, for still carrying, even after everything, a part of what I felt for them. Because deep down, yes, it still hurt. There was still a ghost of love. A distant memory of Isadora who planned her life alongside a man who said he loved her scars. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw two women. The Isadora who was broken, and the Isadora who wanted revenge, but they weren't the same yet. I started having anxiety attacks again. I felt invaded by a guilt that wasn't mine, but that shaped me. As if giving back the pain would turn me into something as low as them. I thought about erasing everything, closing that cycle with a simple delete, returning to ordinary life, leaving the past in the past, and rebuilding a world where they didn't exist. But that's when I found myself in front of the mirror, crying softly, with puffy eyes and tired skin, and I said out loud, "If you don't do anything, all of this will happen again." To another Isadora. They destroyed my life like a marketing project. How many more? I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. And I imagined Lorena, laughing on the cover of magazines, hugging a man she manipulated for convenience. I imagined Guilherme, selling lectures on authenticity and following your heart. I saw them both at events, motivational speeches, columns in women's magazines, and I knew they hadn't stopped. They continued creating victims. They just changed their costumes. I was no exception. I was the prototype. That was when everything became clear. My pain would not be avenged with screams or scandals. It would not be avenged with slaps or emotional outbursts on social media. It would be avenged with something greater: strategy. And for that, I would need to stop being the broken woman and become the woman they fear. I spent the following weeks building a network. I dug up old contacts, opened fake accounts to probe Lorena's circle, and investigated the current state of the company Guilherme had set up with his father-in-law's money. I discovered tax inconsistencies, fraudulent partnerships, and a string of lawsuits hushed up by discreet legal settlements. But it wasn't enough. I needed something stronger, something definitive. That's when fate placed another piece on the board. A name, a face, a woman, who once also believed in Lorena and had her life destroyed by her. An unexpected ally, and perhaps the key to setting in motion the revenge that had been simmering silently inside me for years. When I finally understood that my pain needed a purpose, something inside me shifted. I started waking up earlier. I began writing everything down, organizing my thoughts, cross-referencing dates, names, habits. I created digital folders and bought new notebooks. My apartment was still modest, but my spirit was different. For the first time in years, I felt that I was no longer a hostage to what had happened to me. Now I had a mission. I went back to cafes and libraries, mingled with professional groups and events where Lorena and Guilherme still circulated. Not physically, of course, but online with fake profiles using borrowed names and faces. I started attending live streams, webinars, courses, and forums where the two still held influence. That's how I came across the name that would become the first step in my plan: Camila Vargas. Camila was a financial coach who had been launched by Lorena and Guilherme about 3 years ago. They held her up as an example of success, a simple woman transformed by emotional mentoring and business strategy. Her story became marketing. But, digging deeper, I found clues: filed lawsuits, hushed complaints, and most alarmingly, a lost post on a blog for women entrepreneurs. The post was almost an outburst. Signed only as CV. They promised they would change my life. But when I realized it, my image was on billboards without my permission, my debts were growing, and my signature appeared on contracts I never read. I was used, like so many others. I just didn't have the courage to fight. The text was removed a few days later, but with cache and tracking tools, I was able to access the original content. I took a deep breath. I got in touch. I used a fake profile. I said I was a journalist investigating Lorena and Guilherme's story for an investigative article. Camila took a while to respond, but when she did, it was with a coldness that surprised me. "If what you're saying is true, meet me. 98 Castro Street, Sunday, 4 p.m. That Sunday, I waited anxiously in the car, checking my watch every minute. When Camila showed up, I almost didn't recognize her. She was exhausted, aged by stress, but there was still fire in her eyes. I told her everything, from the altar to the envelope. I showed her some of the evidence, but not all of it. I needed to test her. She listened in silence. Only at the end did she speak. "They did the same thing to me, and to 3 other women I know, all with similar stories. Promises, manipulation, destruction. Each one was afraid. All of them kept quiet. I asked her to give me their contact details. She hesitated. But then she said something that struck me. You're the first one who hasn't come to me asking for comfort, but for a strategy. That changes everything. From then on, everything accelerated. Put together a map of connections. I used network mapping tools, the victims, the companies created, the projects launched and dismantled. The pattern was clear. Lorena created the image. Guilherme executed the financial plan. And together, like a pair of illusionists, they created and destroyed people with surgical precision. It was during this process that I realized they hadn't made a mistake with me. They had chosen me. And that's when I decided to do the same. I would choose them as targets. I started attending in-person events under a new identity. I adopted a new name, Elisa Fontes. I took quick courses and created a small but solid public image. Within months, I began to gain visibility, enough to attract attention, but not enough to raise suspicion. My goal was simple, to infiltrate Lorena's new cycle. And it didn't take long for the opportunity to arise. She was launching a new mentoring program for reborn women. The name of the project? Start Over Strong. I signed up, I was accepted, and within a few days, I received an email directly from her. Hi, Elisa. Your profile is exactly what we're looking for. I can't wait to hear your story of overcoming adversity. Let's build something beautiful together. Build. Oh, yes. I was also building something. A ruin. Theirs. The first meeting of the Start Over Strong mentoring program took place in a co-working space in an upscale neighborhood of the city. I was dressed soberly. Gray blazer, hair tied back, light makeup. I wanted to look strong, but with a hint of fragility. Just enough for Lorena to sense an opportunity. She arrived promptly at 10 a.m. Beautiful as always. Designer clothes, practiced smiles, that aura of an enlightened coach. She scanned each of the participants until she stopped at me. Elisa Fontes? She asked, smiling. I nodded. She approached me. I feel like you have a special energy. Energy. That was what she fed on. The light of others, which she then extinguished with control. The mentoring program consisted of 8 women. Most of them were vulnerable, recently divorced, bankrupt businesswomen, victims of abusive relationships. I blended in perfectly with the group. Over the following weeks, I participated in meetings, group dynamics, emotional confession sessions, and videos for social media. And, as I had predicted, Lorena approached me. She complimented me, asked me to talk after the meetings, wanted to know my story in depth. Little did she know that the story I was telling was hers, retold by me. But it was in one of these sessions that I met Lucia. Lucia was different, older than the group, around 50 years old, discreet, but with eyes that saw more than they let on. She introduced herself as a former businesswoman, saying she had closed her handmade accessories brand after problems with partners, but she didn't give any details. I quickly realized she knew much more than she was saying. In the 4th week after an emotional exercise that Lorena loved to do, a forgiveness game where participants simulated reconciliations with people who had hurt them, Lucia came up to me on the way out. Elisa, can I buy you a coffee? I accepted. We sat down at a bistro 2 blocks away. She ordered a cappuccino. I just had water. Lucia looked me in the eyes, serious. Your name isn't Elisa. My stomach turned. What do you mean? She laughed softly, not sarcastically, with pain. I've seen that look before. The look of someone who's an infiltrator. I froze. She then lowered her voice. I was one of them. One of the first. My business started as a collaboration with Lorena. She asked me to develop exclusive products for a personal branding project. In less than a year, I was in debt, with my name tarnished and my reputation ruined. She took the visibility, the partnerships, and left me with the losses. And you kept quiet? For years. Because I signed agreements. I was threatened, and because I was afraid of being called crazy, jealous, she then opened her purse. She took out a small flash drive. Everything is here. Conversations, contracts, recordings. I kept it for years. I thought I was going to throw it away. But when I saw you talking about your mother in that exercise, I knew. You weren't there to be helped. You were there to expose her. Why help me? I asked, suspicious. Because I didn't know how to fight for myself. But maybe I can fight for someone who has the courage. I was moved. For the first time, Someone who had been a victim like me was standing there, willing to break the cycle. But Lucia wasn't the only one. A few days later, I received a message from an unknown number. "What you're doing is dangerous, but important. Let's talk. I know how to take them down." I thought it was just another attempt at intimidation. I almost ignored it, but I replied. That night, I received an email with confidential documents, proof of suspicious transfers from Guilherme's company, and in the middle of it all, his name, Andre Muniz, a former employee in the finance department of Guilherme's company, who had disappeared after threatening to take evidence to the public prosecutor's office. He was alive, and he was offering me help. The game was turning around. I was no longer alone. Now I had Lucia. I had Camila. And I had a whistleblower willing to do anything. The board was set, the pieces were in place, and the king and queen, Guilherme and Lorena, had no idea that the next move was mine. My every move was calculated. No rush, no impulses. They played with time when they hurt me. Now it was my turn to manipulate it. With Lucia and Camila's files organized and Andre's silent accusations arriving via the secure email address he gave me, I began to draw the lines of the trap. First, I needed to undermine the trust of the network Lorena had built around herself. A bubble of women who blindly admired her, who saw her as a spiritual, emotional, and even moral guide. I created a fake profile with a convincing story. A woman who had been mentored by Lorena and suffered financial ruin after following her advice on emotional investments. I posted on a discreet forum full of readers loyal to topics related to female entrepreneurship. I left clues, details, names of exercises, and phrases that only those who had participated would know. I didn't need much. Within 3 days, comments began to appear, debates arose, and finally, suspicion. Small, it's true, but a crack. And that was all I needed. The first crack in the perfect stained glass window. Meanwhile, I monitored Guilherme's financial steps. Thanks to Andre's information, I learned that their company was involved in a merger with a foreign multinational, something that, if completed, could give them a new financial boost and consolidate their image as high-level entrepreneurs. But there was a weak point, a contractual clause that required verification of reputation and hidden liabilities. That was exactly where I was going to strike. Under a fictitious legal name, I sent an anonymous dossier to the multinational company with evidence of image manipulation, lawsuits filed on behalf of former clients, unethical coaching practices, and possible tax fraud. I couldn't prove everything at that point, not yet, but it was enough to raise a red flag in the risk analysis. 2 days later, I received confirmation. The merger had been temporarily suspended for review. Guilherme didn't know where the sabotage was coming from, and that made him dangerous, but also desperate. The following week, during a mentoring session, I noticed something different about Lorena. She was restless, constantly looking at her cell phone, avoiding emotional connection exercises. She was tense. Then, without warning, she called me aside to talk privately. "Elisa, do you feel a strange vibe lately?" I feigned surprise. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. There's something in the air. Someone here isn't being true." It was my test. She looked at me like a predator sniffing out a trap, but I kept my gaze calm, slightly hurt. "Are you talking about me?" "No, of course not. It's just that sometimes success attracts bad energy." I smiled, almost pityingly. "Or maybe it reveals what was rotten from the start." She hesitated. She blushed, but she didn't say anything. That same night, I received another email from Andre. It was more heated than all the previous ones. I managed to recover a recording of an internal meeting. It shows Guilherme and Lorena's father negotiating her humiliation at the altar as part of the investment contract. Subject: media impact trigger. "Do you want me to send it?" I replied in seconds. When I heard the audio, I cried. But not out of pain, out of certainty. It was real. Documented. They had sold my collapse as entertainment. That was it. My pain had been a bargaining chip. Emotional capital to leverage a brand. The next day, I sent the encrypted recording to a journalist with an impeccable reputation. An old contact of Camilla's who didn't bow to threats or get intimidated by lawyers. Of course, with clear instructions, nothing could go public yet. But he needed to be prepared, because the end was near. And I wanted their downfall to be more than just emotional. I wanted it to be public, with cameras, with headlines, with the whole country watching. But before that, there was one last piece I needed to move, one that lay dormant in the past, one I had avoided for a decade: my mother. Because if I was really going to reveal everything, I needed to face the person who saw me fall apart first. And more than that, I needed to make peace with the Isadora she still remembered, and that I was about to bury for good. The next day began with what seemed like just another rumor in the corporate world. The international group negotiating with Guilherme's company had hired an external auditor. Standard procedure, they said. But I knew. It was the harbinger of an earthquake. At the same time, Lorena began to show clear signs of paranoia. During a mentoring session, she interrupted one of the participants in the middle of an emotional exercise and said, out of the blue, "Have you ever thought that someone here might not be being sincere, that they might be here for other reasons?" The room went cold. I kept my eyes on the floor, playing my role perfectly. Elisa Fontes, the woman in search of healing. But inside, I was smiling. In the closed mentoring group, Lorena began to restrict her posts. She deleted old photos, changed captions, and disabled comments on videos. I reviewed her interviews from the past few months and noticed that she avoided mentioning the names of clients and partners, something that had always been her trademark. She was shielding herself, but it was already too late. Guilherme, meanwhile, started making shorter, colder videos. That inspiring mentor vibe gave way to an anxious, mechanical demeanor. In one of them, he misspelled his own company's name. In another, he stuttered when asked about the merger. But the most revealing was a live stream that Lorena tried to do with an allied influencer. The broadcast cut out halfway through. When it came back, she was pale, saying, "We had a hacker attack, guys. Everything's fine now." That was a lie. What happened was the silent firing of encrypted messages that I sent, under various profiles, to the sponsors who still supported her image. Each one contained a fragment of the truth. The audio of the contract, the dossier of complaints, the pattern of emotional manipulation based on evidence. Some responded with polite notes of concern. Others simply disappeared. The cancellations began discreetly. An event in Porto Alegre, canceled due to scheduling conflicts. In-person mentoring in Belo Horizonte, postponed until the second half of the year. Partnership with a cosmetics brand, mutual termination. It was the first layer of the fall. Emptiness settling where there had once been applause. But the tension peaked when I received a desperate message from Camilla. They found something. They're probing former participants. They called me. They're trying to find out who leaked it. You're at risk. I remained calm, because that was exactly the effect I wanted to cause. Internal insecurity, turning them against their own allies, hunting ghosts. The paranoia grew. Lucia was also approached. A former advisor to Lorena contacted her via encrypted message, insinuating that there was someone dirty in the group. She feigned surprise. But inside, she was ready for any confrontation. Days later, I received a blocked call. I answered with my heart racing. "Isadora?" It was Guilherme's voice. "Who is this?" "No need to pretend. I know it's you." Silence. "Are you satisfied? Did you get what you wanted?" I took a deep breath and said, with a calmness that surprised even myself, "Not even close." He hung up. I knew then that he was shaking. Because if he called me, it's because he wasn't sure of anything. He just felt it, and that weakened him. But there was a risk. There always is. With tension spreading between them, sponsors deserting, journalists waiting silently for the green light, there was only one detail that could compromise everything. They could run away. Disappear, change countries, start over somewhere else, with a new name, a new look, like so many predators do. So I decided to move up the last step, the public exposure. But before taking that final step, there was something else that needed to be done. I went to my mother's house. She opened the door with tears in her eyes. "Isadora?" It had been 7 years since we had seen each other. "Mom, I need you to know what I'm about to do." We sat down. I told her everything, every detail, from the altar to Andre's email. I showed her the evidence, photos. She listened without blinking. In the end, she held my hand. "I won't judge you, daughter, but promise me one. When you're done, come back to me, not as Elisa, as Isadora, the woman you've always been. Strong, but good." I nodded, and for the first time in a decade, I felt like I had my mother back. I went home that night and sent the email with the subject line, "Time to turn on the spotlight." The journalist replied with a single sentence, "It'll be out on Sunday. Front page, TV, web, everything. Sunday, the day of the fall." Sunday dawned with cloudy skies. I woke up early, had a simple breakfast, sat on the couch with my hands clasped and my heart racing. My phone was face down, as if looking at it would trigger something irreversible. At 9:02 a.m., I received the notification. Special report. Successful mentor and women's influencer involved in emotional manipulation and fraud scheme. See the audio recordings and documents. I clicked. The page loaded slowly, as if the universe wanted to torture me for a few more seconds. When it opened, I saw the headline in bold letters, photos of Lorena and Guilherme smiling, the same ones they used in female self-esteem campaigns, next to excerpts from audio recordings, screenshots, videos, and statements from former clients I had convinced to testify. It was everything. It was all there. I thought I would feel immediate relief, but I felt fear, not for myself, but because I knew how they would react. At noon, Lorena deleted her Instagram account. Guilherme took the company website down. The mentoring profiles disappeared. On Twitter, hashtags began to circulate. Mentoring or manipulation. She is not inspiring. Emotional scam. Former clients began to speak out, some timidly, others with pent-up anger. The storm I had prepared was on its way. At 2 p.m., Camilla called me in tears. Not out of sadness, but out of catharsis. "Isa, you did this." But what I didn't expect was the counterattack. At 5 p.m., I received an email from the law firm Castro and Duarte. A PDF file, extrajudicial notification. They accused me of defamation, misuse of identity, invasion of privacy, and illegal disclosure of business information. They signed with a clear threat. If I didn't take everything down and reveal my sources, they would sue me for millions. I had a panic attack right then and there. I froze. My whole body was shaking. I called Lucia. She rushed over to my house. We sat on the kitchen floor, breathing together. "They're trying to break you," she said. It's the cry of someone who feels the tide turning. Even so, the fear grew. At 6:30 p.m., I received another message, this time from Andre. "We have a problem. Someone from the newspaper leaked the identity of the main source. Lorena knows you're Isadora. She's going all out, and she has contacts in the press. They want to reverse the narrative." That was it. They were trying to turn the tables, and they succeeded. That same night, a sensationalist channel released an interview with Guilherme. The presenter, clearly bought off, said things like, "Are we facing yet another case of female revenge disguised as social criticism?" Guilherme, with teary eyes and a dejected face, said, "I just wanted to help people. I'm sorry if anyone felt used, but that was never my intention. What they're doing to me, it's cruel." He cried, and the internet, as always, was divided. Some called him manipulative, but others started attacking me, saying I was bitter, vindictive, a woman who couldn't get over being left at the altar. The hashtag #ArchMentiu, Isadora Laed, trended. It was like reliving everything, but twice as bad, only now. I was no longer the same woman. I cried, yes. I despaired, yes. But I didn't give up. I took everything I had, all the files that hadn't been published yet, the most damning recordings, the secret contracts, the threats, the printouts of messages from coerced former employees, the money transfers to shell companies, and I sent it all to 3 independent news outlets, with confidentiality clauses, and proof that my identity had been leaked illegally. But that wasn't all. I scheduled an interview. Live. The following Monday at 8 p.m., I would appear on national television. I would show my face, I would tell my story, and I would name names. But that same day, someone knocked on my door. It was a man in a suit with a threatening look. He handed me a folder and said, "If you go up to that studio tonight, your mother will pay for it." I opened the folder. Inside were photos of my mother leaving the house, going to the bakery, taking the bus, photographed clearly, up close. It was a warning. They didn't just want to silence me, they wanted to destroy me. But what they forgot is that I had already been destroyed once, and I survived. The photos of my mother in enemy hands took my breath away. I sat on the living room floor, the folder open in front of me, feeling the walls close in on me. The clock read 6:44 p.m. I had just over an hour before I went live. Every minute felt like a knife tearing through the doubt in my chest. If I went up to the studio, I could put my mother in danger. If I backed down, they would win. I grabbed my phone. I called her. "Mom, listen. I need you to go to the address I gave you, now." She hesitated, but she didn't ask any questions. She knew the moment had come. I had already prepared everything: a car, a safe place, trusted security guards. What was supposed to be a precaution turned out to be vital protection. At 7:22 p.m., I received the message: "I'm here. I'm fine. I love you." I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I got up, and I went. The studio was quieter than I had imagined. The lights were warm, the makeup artist was nervous, the producer was running back and forth. The journalist was waiting for me with a clipboard full of notes and a look that said, "This is going to blow up." She greeted me firmly. "Are you sure about this?" "I am." Then from the moment that camera turns on, you are no longer just a victim. You will be a symbol. They will love you. They will hate you. But no one will ignore you. I nodded. At 8 p.m. sharp, the signal went on. The intro played. The journalist looked at me, then at the camera, and announced, "Good evening. Today you're going to hear a story that could change the way you see the world of influence, motivation, and the big names in emotional entrepreneurship. With me is Isadora Mendez, the woman behind the accusation that brought the country to a standstill." The camera turned to me. The spotlight. The light. The silence of the world. "Good evening, Isadora. Thank you for being here. I'm the one who's grateful for finally having a voice." And then I spoke. I told everything. From the beginning, without masks. I spoke of the altar, of public humiliation, of emotional collapse, of reconstruction. I talked about the contracts between Lorena and Guilherme, the image manipulation, the emotional suffering as marketing project. I showed documents. We played audio recordings and video clips. The journalist, in shock, asked me, "Are you saying that they orchestrated your destruction as a launch strategy?" Yes. And I wasn't the only one. I was the first. I mentioned Lucia, Camilla, other women who authorized me to use their names, former employees, coerced lawyers, partners who were financially harmed. I showed the transfers, the tax documents, the behind-the-scenes photos. Absolutely everything was shown with proof. Live. Uncut. The journalist then showed a screen. The live stream that Guilherme had done a few days earlier, crying, saying he was the victim of a vindictive and frustrated woman. "What would you say to him now?" I looked at the camera, and I said, "I'm not frustrated. I'm a survivor. And the only thing that frustrated me was believing that you had a heart." The broadcast lasted almost an hour. When it ended, the presenter hugged me and said, "Get ready. The avalanche is about to begin." In the first few hours, the internet reacted with fury. The comments were divided, but as the night went on, the truth prevailed. Hashtags such as "Lorena mentiu," "Lorena lied," and "I Justiça por Isadora," "Justice for Isadora," spread. People began to share similar experiences. A support group formed in real time. Public opinion turned. The next morning, the public prosecutor's office announced the opening of an investigation against Guilherme Duarte and Lorena Castro for fraud, emotional blackmail, collective moral harassment, and witness tampering. The national news replayed my interview. News sites reported the case as one of the biggest manipulation scandals of the last decade. Lorena disappeared from social media. Guilherme tried to defend himself, but now his words were empty, discredited. Brands canceled contracts. Old videos were deleted. The mentoring channel was shut down. But the most shocking was yet to come. Camilla called me the next day. "A precedent has been set. Other women are coming forward. And now, with you at the forefront, they have courage." I cried, with relief, with pain, with catharsis. My mother returned home 2 days later, safe and sound. She hugged me for what felt like an eternity, and whispered, "Now the world knows who you are." And I knew it was true. But their downfall was not yet complete, and the price of revenge would still be paid. In the days following the interview, society tore away the veil. And behind it, everyone saw the true faces of Lorena and Guilherme. The fall was swift, brutal, impossible to contain. Sponsors began issuing public statements of condemnation. Major beauty and women's fashion brands, which had previously praised Lorena as a model of overcoming adversity, immediately terminated their contracts. A chain of stores took down a campaign that used her image with the phrase, "Empower yourself like Lorena." Ironically, she was silenced by the same platforms where she had previously dominated. Guilherme had his bank accounts frozen as a preventive measure due to suspected tax evasion and irregular transactions. The audit I had prompted months earlier was now the main tool used by the public prosecutor's office to bring down the business structure that sustained their empire. But it was the public, emotional, and symbolic downfall that hurt them the most. On the Monday after my interview, Lorena tried to post a video. It was an apology, or something that tried to look like one. She wore neutral clothes, no makeup, in a white background, clearly trying to convey humility. "I know I made mistakes," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I hurt people, but everything I did was from the heart." The comments exploded, but not with compassion. "You used other people's pain as a stepping stone. What about the altar, Lorena? Was that from the heart, too? Emotional manipulator, you didn't make a mistake. You planned it." In less than 4 hours, the video was taken down due to mass complaints. She disappeared completely shortly after. Guilherme tried to resist. He was called for a live interview with a respected journalist, but he could barely get a sentence out. When the host confronted him with the audio recordings of the contract and called him an emotional predator of vulnerable women, he got up and left the studio. From there, what was left of their public image imploded. The following week, a protest took place in front of the former headquarters of the mentoring company. Former clients held signs that read, "I believed in you and you destroyed me. My depression started with your mentoring. You profited from my pain." These weren't just cries. They were echoes of voices that had been silenced for years. And now, they were impossible to ignore. Internally, messages began to reach me. From women I had never met. "Thank you for saying what I could never say. I thought it was my fault. Today I understand that I was deceived. Your pain gave us courage." And then something I never imagined happened. I was invited to speak at an international conference on ethics in communication and emotional health. For the first time, I was called not as a victim, but as a reference. I didn't accept right away. There was still a lot inside me that needed healing, but the invitation made me reflect. My story wasn't just about revenge. It was about voice, about visibility, about exposing the truth in a world that thrives on appearances. And while the world was restructuring itself around my truth, Lorena and Guilherme disappeared from the surface. But I was still monitoring them discreetly. Through contacts, I found out that Lorena tried to move to the interior of Portugal, but her visa was denied. Interpol had received a red alert about suspicious movements involving money laundering by front companies. Guilherme, meanwhile, tried to transfer funds to an account in Uruguay, but was intercepted. His passport was confiscated. He was prevented from leaving the country. 2 days later, images emerged of him leaving a police station, surrounded by cameras, pushed by security guards, his face pale, unshaven, and his eyes panicked. "Guilherme, what do you have to say about the accusations?" shouted a reporter. He did not respond. But for the first time, I saw in his face what I had not seen at the altar, on social media, or in the videos. Shame. Real shame. Raw shame. Devastating shame. I sat on the sofa in my house that night, with the folder where it all began on my lap, the envelope that had arrived months ago. I opened it again. I looked at the old photo of Guilherme, smiling as if he already knew everything he would do to me. And I realized he didn't smile like that anymore. Because now the world knew who he really was, and that no image recovery could ever fix. Their downfall wasn't just a headline. It was a series of events that eroded everything they had built: finances, reputation, freedom, even their most intimate relationships. The week after my interview, the public prosecutor's office formalized the complaint based on the evidence that Camilla, Lucia, other victims, and I had provided. The case was opened with 7 criminal charges: fraud, money laundering, witness tampering, misuse of image, misrepresentation, conspiracy, and collective moral harassment. The first hearing was scheduled for 2 months later. Guilherme, who had been under house arrest, had his assets frozen. His lawyers, the same ones who had intimidated me with a ridiculous notification, now faced difficulties in keeping him out of preventive detention. They claimed media persecution, but the judge was categorical. The defendant faces serious allegations backed by strong evidence. Justice does not bow to public opinion, but neither does it ignore it. Meanwhile, Lorena disappeared completely. According to sources, she was admitted to a high-end psychiatric clinic, financed by what remained of the family's funds. They claimed mental and emotional exhaustion. But investigations pointed to another reality: attempted tax evasion, use of offshore accounts, undeclared contracts. The net was closing in, and her silence was the only sound that remained. The mentoring company, previously valued at almost $20 million, was officially shut down, not by choice, but by court order. All profiles linked to the brand were deleted. The website pages redirected to a cold and objective note. Due to ongoing legal proceedings, Company X has permanently ceased its activities. More than 40 civil lawsuits were filed by former clients. Among them, 18 were from women who had gone through the same manipulation as me. Camilla led a group that was now organizing as an association of victims of corporate emotional manipulation and intended to propose legal changes to the regulation of mentoring in the country. Their downfall became a political issue. For the first time, congressmen and senators debated in plenary the urgency of emotionally protecting vulnerable women who sought professional help and fell into the hands of predators disguised as mentors. I received invitations to participate in documentaries. An international streaming service wanted the rights to my story. A book was proposed. My image, once marked by an empty altar, now became a symbol of resistance. But I refused almost everything. It was not yet time to become a public figure. First, I needed to close some chapters. I visited the building where I was supposed to marry Guilherme. It was closed for renovations, but the caretaker, a kind old man, recognized me. And without asking me anything, he let me in for 5 minutes. I walked down the silent hallway. The altar was gone, but the space was still there. I closed my eyes. I saw myself in a white dress, alone, the envelope in my hands, the world crumbling around me. And next to me, I saw the new woman I had become, standing, dressed in black, head held high. Revenge didn't bring me back to who I was, but it brought me something much greater: awareness. 2 months later, the hearing took place. I arrived with Camilla and Lucia, together, strong. Guilherme was there, pale, tired, aged. He wore a worn suit and kept his eyes down. When he saw me, he tried to keep his gaze steady, but he couldn't. He knew he had lost. Lorena did not appear. Her lawyer claimed she was mentally unstable, but the judge ordered an expert evaluation. The strategy didn't work. During my testimony, I looked into the eyes of everyone in the courtroom, and I said, "They taught me through pain what it means to be a victim, but I learned, through reconstruction, what it means to be a voice." The silence after my speech was deafening, but it was the silence of respect. The judge closed the hearing by saying, "Justice cannot restore what has been stolen from the soul, but it can prevent others from being hurt in the same way, and that is why we are here." I left there with certainty. They were finished, morally, financially, socially. But what struck me most was realizing that fear had changed sides. Now, they were looking over their shoulders because they knew the world was watching them, and there was nowhere left to hide. The court had spoken. The headlines had screamed. The truth was on the streets, on social media, in conversations, in court decisions. Guilherme and Lorena were destroyed, not just canceled. They were now names that provoked awkward silence when mentioned. And yet, the hole inside me did not disappear. Because revenge, however just it may be, also takes its toll. I paid with time. 10 years of my life marked by pain that did not belong to me, and that was sewn together by hands that pretended to care while sharpening the blade. I paid with relationships, friendships that never returned, a family that, even by my side, had to rebuild itself after seeing my pain stamped on every corner. My mother grew old in the shadow of my suffering. My father, now deceased, never saw this turnaround. He left thinking that I had been defeated by life. I paid with love. I spent years unable to trust any man. I avoided relationships as if they were camouflaged traps, because, somewhere deep down, the trauma told me that any love was a performance that would bring me down again, and I paid with my identity. I spent so much time being the abandoned bride, the avenged one, the one who told all, that sometimes I forgot to just be Isadora, the woman who likes hibiscus tea, who dances when she's alone, who loves old movies and takes care of a plant called Maria Xenia, the woman who existed before everything else. For a long time, I thought that by defeating them, I would feel whole again. But the truth is, there is no going back. There is only continuing to be, with everything that the pain has added, and with everything that revenge has transformed. After the hearing, I took some time away. Lucia lent me a house she had in the Mantiqueira Mountains, a quiet place, surrounded by trees, where the noise of the world doesn't reach you. I spent a month there. No internet, no interviews, no social media, just me, my memories, my ghosts, and my body trying to understand that now, there was nothing chasing me anymore. That's where I wrote my diary. The first sentence I wrote was, I didn't defeat them to win. I defeated myself because, without that, they would still be alive inside me. It was also there that I found the courage to open my box of old photos again. I saw myself at 25, smiling next to Lorena. I saw Guilherme looking at me as if he were promising me the world. And instead of anger, for the first time, I felt pity. They could have been anything, but they chose to be shadows. And me? I chose to be light. Even if that light came after a lot of darkness, I only returned to the city when I felt that my body had stopped tightening with every notification sound. When I arrived at my apartment, that same simple studio in the north, something inside me smiled. Because that small place, which for years had been a symbol of my exile, was now the place where I began my reconstruction. My fortress. At the end of that month, I received a letter. Handwritten, in a simple envelope. No return address, but with a signature at the end. Lorena. The content was short, direct. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness, nor to justify myself, just to say that I lost, and that you won. I still can't understand how someone I underestimated so much was able to destroy us with such precision, but now I understand that I never knew you. Maybe because you were still building yourself. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just closed the letter, put it in a drawer, and left it there, as a reminder. Not of the pain, but of overcoming it. Because yes, revenge had its price, but what I gained was much greater than what I lost. I gained my voice. I gained my story. I gained myself. The days went back to normal, or rather, they went back to having space for something like normal to be possible. I wake up early, make my coffee in silence, open the windows, watch the light streaming through the curtains. The city is still the same, but I am no longer the same. I am no longer the woman who lived waiting for someone to come and save me. And ironically, I never imagined that my salvation would come from the most unlikely place, from the courage to tell my own story. Yes, I was humiliated. I was used. I was abandoned. But more than all that, I was rebuilt. Every scar I carry today is a chapter of overcoming. Every silence I accepted out of fear is now replaced by conscious words. Every tear I shed built the bridge that pulled me out of the pit. And perhaps most surprising of all, I forgave. Not for them, but for myself. I no longer carry the weight of hating them. I don't need to, because they are no longer bigger than my story. They were just the prologue. I receive many messages these days, women of all ages, from all over, telling me their stories, their pain, their falls, their abusers, their Lorenas, their Guilhermes. And I listen, because now I understand the power of being heard. I speak in small groups. I participate in discreet events. I rejected million-dollar contracts with sensationalist channels because my truth is not for sale. But I wrote a book, just for me, for now. It's called The Altar That Burned But Didn't Kill Me. Maybe one day I'll publish it, or maybe I'll keep it for my daughter, if I ever have one. So she'll know that female strength isn't born from confrontation with others, but from rediscovering oneself. The other day I ran into a man, not Guilherme, of course. Someone else, someone I met at an event on emotional health, a psychologist. Kind. He knows how to listen without trying to fix things. He has sincere eyes and a light laugh. We've had coffee a few times. He doesn't ask me about my past. And I'm in no hurry to explain, because for the first time, I'm not trying to be the ideal woman. I'm just being Isadora, and that is enough. The altar is in the past, the dress burned, the photos deleted, but the woman who came out of it all, she remains. And if you, who have listened to me this far, are going through something similar, know this. You don't need revenge to prove you're strong, but if you need to get up, scream, expose yourself, do it for you. Not out of pride, but for freedom. Because sometimes justice doesn't come with a hammer. It comes with a woman holding her head high, saying, I survived, and now it's my turn to tell the story. Thank you for listening. I am Isadora Mendes, and this was the story of how I was reborn from the ashes that Lorena and Guilherme left behind. But from my ashes, life sprouted, and may it be so for you too.